people who out there who don't know what ERC is, it's an IRS program, came out of COVID, came out of the pandemic. It stands for Employee Retention Credits. So there were three main programs that came out of the CARES Act, which was written into law by Congress at the beginning of the pandemic. There was the PPP program. Do you remember that one, where everybody was getting loans for the employees they kept on?
Mm-hmm.
So PPP was Paycheck Protection Program, and that one was was like publicized like crazy because the banks were behind it. So it's funny because right now we're having a lot of issues in the banking industry. So the banks were behind the PPP program, and they pushed it really hard because they were making interest on that money. They were charging interest on the loans. They didn't care that the loans were going to be forgiven by the government. They just knew that they were going to get their chunk. And so anyway, they advertised it super hard. All the banks were doing it, even like your small mom and pop credit unions, they were all doing PPP loans. So that was a huge one. Another program that came out of the CARES Act was the EIDL, and that was Economic Impact Disaster Loans. And so those were basically the same thing. It was COVID relief, but that was a loan directly from the SBA. PPP was also a loan through the SBA, but came from banks. Mm-hmm. EIDL was a loan directly from the SBA, and none of those were forgiven. They did have like a little like a grant in the beginning of them, so they would advance you $5,000 or $10,000, and that portion of it was forgiven because it was a grant. But usually a company would get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in EIDL money, and they still owe that to this day. The third program is what we're talking about, which is ERC, Employee Retention Credit. That particular program is not a loan at all. It's a refund of payroll taxes that a company paid in to the system. So it's COVID relief for businesses that had W-2 employees, and companies can claim their ERC refund and they get money back.